Welcome to Keep It Fictional, a weekly podcast for book lovers by book lovers. Build your to-be-read list with Sadie, Liz, Virginia, Fiona, and Corrine from the Port Moody Public Library. Warning, this podcast contains strong opinions and may cause an increase in your library holds list.
My second most anticipated book is one that's a little bit outside of my typical reading tastes. So I found this one while kind of browsing around NetGalley looking for different arcs that I could check out for the upcoming release months. And I found this book right around the time that I had read Witches by Brenda Lozano, which if you listen to the Latin American Heritage Month episode, that one was kind of about this culture in Mexico, this indigenous culture in Mexico down in the Oaxaca area. And it kind of sparked this interest in me in learning more about like indigenous Mexican cultures and mythologies and folklores and all that stuff that kind of interests me in other areas, but I haven't really read much about Mexico. So this book is another kind of mythology story. It is a retelling of someone who's described as one of the most controversial and misunderstood women in Mexico's history and mythology. So this book is called Malinalli by Veronica Chapa, and this one will be out in March, I think. Release date is March 11th. So I'll share a bit of the description of the story. It's about a real-life historical figure from the 16th century, the woman known by many names, but most commonly as Malinalli or La Malinche, who was the Nahua interpreter who helped the Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortez communicate with the native people of Mexico. So she's an indigenous woman who was able to communicate with the Spanish, the conquistadors, the folks coming in to colonize Mexico. When indigenous leaders saw her marching into their cities, they believed that she was a goddess, someone that was there to save them, blessed with the divine power to interpret the Spaniards' intentions for their land. Later, historians and pop culture would deem her as a traitor, as the native girl who helped sell Mexico's future to an invader. So this book is a fantasy retelling of the story of Malinalli. Malinalli is all of those things. She is kind of this powerhouse of a woman. She's someone who is really, really significant in Mexico's history, but she's also a very young girl. She was kidnapped into slavery by the age of 12. She was fighting to survive the devastation brought on both by the Spanish and by the greed and the cruelty of the emperor of the Aztec Empire, whose name I will probably mispronounce, but it's Moctezuma. And in this version of the story, in this version of Malinalli, she's blessed with magical powers and supported by a close-knit circle of priestesses. And she vows to help defend her people's legacy. So it's kind of a more like feminist, kind of female-leading magical version of the original Malinalli story. This one is the first novel to reimagine and reinterpret Malinalli's story with empathy, with humanity, and with the awe that she has always deserved. This is also a debut novel, so I'm interested to kind of check out Veronica Chapa's writing style, see if she's the kind of writer that I'll come back and revisit in the future. And reviewers say it spins an epic tale of magic, sisterhood, survival, and Mexican resilience. So I love a good mythological retelling, but I haven't really read anything about Mexican mythologies, which was kind of my first delve into learning more about indigenous Mexican cultures, kind of since I was in Spanish class in high school. So I'm always looking for a strong female lead, kind of a Joan of Arc type of character, or a witch. I love a woman with magical powers. So this one is Malinalli, and it is going to be out on March 11th.
All right. Why don't we throw it back to Virginia? What is your number 3/randomly picked third book you're talking about?
Definitely randomly picked. But as Corrine liked to say, back to the nonsense. Different type of nonsense, but back to the nonsense. And probably the banana pants pick for this season would be this one. This book, when it was published in 2020 in Spanish, was considered by New York Times to be one of the best 10 books written in Spanish that year. And now it's finally available in English, published by Charcoal Press, which is one of my favorite publisher. Really important UK publisher for me because they specialize in contemporary Latin American literature. And it was a huge part of my reading life when I started reading more books translated from Spanish. So on the upcoming catalog coming out in February 28th, I think my books are mostly February, so that would be my month. It is their latest book, at least translated. It's got all the adjectives to describe this book that I love: shocking, bizarre, funny, imaginative. And they always talk about how his style, his structure, whatever prose decisions, that's what makes his books interesting. Really looking forward to it. Plus also got a banana pants premise. So this is The National Telepathy by Roque Larraquy, and it's translated by Frank Wynne from Spanish. Larraquy is a Argentinian author. He's the author of a book called Come Madre, which I bought, but I haven't actually read yet. So hopefully I can be able to read that before I read this new one. And apparently it contains man-eating plants, among many other things. So yeah, looking forward to that. This one, The National Telepathy, is set in 1933 when the first Argentina ethnographic theme park opens. And because of that, 19 indigenous people were taken from the Amazon and shipped over to Buenos Aires to be displayed at this theme park. But what they didn't know is that hiding on the boat is a sloth. But not any sloth, a telepathic sloth. But not just a regular telepathic sloth, a sloth that can create what they call, quote, erotically explosive telepathic connections between the last two people that get scratched by the sloth. And at this point, I'm like, I don't even care what happens next. I'm going to be reading this book. Larraquy being a author that is famous for his Black humor, for his satire, this is supposed to be a book that really make fun of all the man that is out there who is very scared of women and their bodies, who like to mansplain, who like to use science to explain things to us, to, justify why they should be up there on the top, and who will do anything to stay there. So it said it's a mixture of kind of real and fictional documents and sort of historical events. I call this my banana pants read. It's going to be the light read, I think, of the season, just because it sounds like it is going to be hilarious. So I am looking forward to another wonderful book coming out from Charco Press in February 28th. This is The National Telepathy by Roque Larraquy. All right. I'm not going to go to... let's go to Corinne because she has like the best face every time after I finish talking. So let's just see her face just so that you get it.
I'm so upset.
It's got a cute sloth, I think, maybe.
But what do you mean erotically charged
telepathic sloth that create erotically connections? Yeah, don't think too hard about it. What's your next book, Corinne?
Can't stop thinking hard about it. You can't just put that out into the room and be like, and let's move on. I hate it. I really hate it. Why? Why is the sloth doing that?
Oh, you can read it and find out. I'm going to read it and find out. February 28th. Got a pre-order already.
I hate it. Here's the worst part about that, Virginia, is I actually have that book on hold.
Oh, wow.
Because of the title and the cover. And I knew nothing about it. I didn't read the synopsis. I didn't do anything. I was just like, this title really and cover really appeals to me. So I'm going to put this on hold. And now I'm really upset with you. I'm upset with myself. I'm just upset.
Do we need to switch over to Sadie then? Are you too upset to talk about your next book?
No, but the next one is short, so I'll just do it, but I won't be happy about it. I'm so angry. All right, this is another book. It's not my number 3 book. Okay, let me get this tone out of my voice so that I can talk about it properly. Not put all this sloth burden on poor Irvin Weathersby Jr. He doesn't deserve this. He doesn't deserve that. However, the title actually works really well. The book is called In Open Contempt, which is kind of how I feel about Virginia's choices. The subject matter has nothing to do with sloths. So this is In Open Contempt, Confronting White Supremacy in Art and Public Spaces by Irvin Weathersby Jr. Again, this is a book that's more or less in my wheelhouse. There's the word art, public spaces, examination thereof, and contempt, which I love. So this book actually has come out January 7th. Big day for me. Big day. And so this book has been blurbed by Jason Reynolds, so you know it's going to be good. And so this is kind of a personal examination at looking at the history of white supremacy in America through the lens of public spaces and public art. So talking as a Black man, he is looking at arts, monuments, public spaces, all of these kind of monuments to slave owners, to Confederate soldiers that are kind of like embedded in the landscape. So you are going to see school names with the name of slave owners. You are going to see street names with the name of slave owners, signs. And he's talking about that kind of like specter of white supremacy within the landscape, within monuments, public spaces, and art, and how that affects people. And, you know, he's looking at this through a personal lens. So in some of the reviews I saw, they said, you know, like if you're looking for a debate of what to do with the public statues of slave owners, this is not where it's going to be. It's more of what's kind of been described as like a poetic memoir about it. So kind of looking at his own personal view and experience and understanding of it, as well as, you know, looking at the artists and curators and city planners who are kind of struggling with this legacy and what to do about it. And I think, you know, this isn't just an issue that affects the United States. It's an issue that affects Canada as well. There's all these relics in very public open spaces. Again, public schools, elementary schools, street names, all of that legacy of white supremacy is kind of baked into our public spaces. And then how do you reckon with that? And what do you do moving forward? And so I'm really interested in this book. Again, was described as a spirited and poetic view on this, but I think it's a discussion well worth having everywhere. And yeah, so I'm really interested in kind of hearing his take on it, kind of learning a little bit more of it, and examining the people who are really trying to rectify this in the public spaces. So yeah, I'm super excited for this book. Great cover. Love a great cover. And so yeah, I've got this one. It's waiting for me to go and pick up at my local bookstore. So I'm super excited about that. So I'm going to pass it over to Sadie. Sadie, are you feeling contemptuous?
I wasn't. No, I'm sorry. It just made me think, and this is going to sound weird because don't think too much about this. Just made me think of when we went to the aquarium and we actually did get to see the sloths this last time. And that was very exciting because you don't often get to see the sloths. And Evie was very excited that she got to see the sloths. We didn't get to see the octopus, though. The octopus was hiding. So no, I'm not in contempt. All right. So I have two sequels on my list, two series that I have been waiting quite a while for the next books to come out in. And this first one, I think the last book, oh dear, I'm not going to remember when it came out. It's been some time. 2021. So it's been 4 years since the last one in this series came out. I didn't actually know that there were supposed to be more books in this series before the last one came out. I know that Corrine, we have discussed this series and do not agree on it, but that's okay. I really love the series, and that is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. So The Bone Season, which is the first book and the name of the series kind of revolves around 19-year-old Paige Mahoney in the year 2059 in sort of an alternate reality, futuristic London. And it follows Paige, who is part of the criminal underworld. She is what's called a dream walker, which is a rare form of clairvoyance. And she works for one of the underworld's kind of biggest crime bosses, kind of as his second in command. But when she is accused and arrested for murder, she is brought to a kind of a prison camp. And she starts to learn that the Republic of Sion is not exactly what it appears, that it is actually being run by and controlled by a race of immortal beings from another world. And they are the ones who she is now kind of indebted to in this prison, and having to follow their every command. And she kind of stages a rebellion and a resistance, and kind of the series goes on like that, where obviously you find that there is more going on than you think there is. Not all of these immortals are necessarily bad and working to destroy the people. Some of them, including the one that Paige slowly starts to fall in love with, is actually a pretty good, I don't want to say person because I don't think that is what they are described as, but a pretty good being. Yeah, so this is now book number 5 in this series. So I won't say too much about the intern because I don't want to, if anybody has not read the series and they would like to read the series, I'm not going to ruin too much about it. Paige is now outside of the Republic of Sion for the very first time in more than a decade. She doesn't know how she got there because half a year of her life has been wiped from her memory. So she's slowly trying to figure out how to get back to the revolution, back to London, back to kind of her group of people she was interacting with and that she was kind of helping before all of this happened. Her journey takes her to Venice, where she learns a dangerous secret, one that could change the course and the face of the war between the humans and the immortals, and also the relationships and connections that she has with the people who she has thought that she can trust in the past, who she has thought that she cannot trust in the past, and kind of all of the betrayals and trusts and twisty-turny things that she did not understand or realize. So yeah, I'm not going to say again too much about this one, just because if you have not read the series, I don't want to ruin anything for you. If you are into kind of, I would place this more in a sci-fi genre, definitely than a fantasy genre, which is not usually my typical. But there's just something about this series. I read Bone Season kind of on a whim when it, way back when it first came out. And I just really enjoyed it. Kind of the world connected with me. And so, yeah, so I got into this one. And so I'm really excited to see where this story is going. I think it's supposed to be a 7-book series. So there are supposed to be 2 more books coming out after this. So we will see. We will see what happens. Yeah, so that is The Dark Mirror, is the 5th book of the series by Samantha Shannon.
All right, so my next book is a solo debut from Canadian author Amal El-Mohtar, who's best known as one half of the writing team behind one of my favorite sapphic sci-fi space adventures, which of course there are many of, called This Is How You Lose the Time War. So this is El-Mohtar's first delve into writing a book on her own. I think she's done short stories and stuff, but this is her first full-length novel. I'm suspecting that this author wrote blue sections. If you read This Is How You Lose the Time War, you get 2 perspectives. You get blue and red, who are both kind of these like intergalactic space like assassin people. And I assume that Amal wrote blue. And if that's true, I can safely say that she was my favorite of the 2 writers of the book, because blue's sections were always my favorite ones. So I'm really hyped to see that she's coming out with her first solo book. It's another queer novella, kind of similar to This Is How You Lose the Time War, but this one leans more into fantasy than into like the sci-fi of the other book. So this one is about the Fae, which I know Sadie has spoken about on the podcast before, and I'm pretty sure she said it's not her favorite realm of fantasy literature. I've never delved into Fae literature before. I've seen some like TV shows that incorporate Fae stories and Fae cultures in them. I haven't read the Sarah J. Maas books. I haven't really read anything about the Fae. And it's not because I've disliked it. It's more just that I've never really been drawn to it. But I am drawn to this book because of the author more than anything else. And reviewers online are giving the writing itself a lot of praise. So even though it's about a topic that isn't usually within my wheelhouse, I think I'll check it out and see kind of how it holds up and whether I like it as much as This Is How You Lose the Time War. So there is actually not a lot of info available about the plot. I assume that's because the book is very short. So if you give away too much, you'll be giving away the entire story. But I'll read a little bit of what I was able to find. So, follow the river Liss to the small town of Thistleford on the edge of Ferry and meet 2 sisters who cannot be separated even in death. In this town dwells the mysterious Hawthorne family. There they tend and harvest the enchanted willows and honor an ancient compact to sing to them in thanks for their magic. We're singing to the trees. No one honors this more devoutly than the family's latest daughters, Esther and Isabel, who cherish each other as much as they cherish the ancient trees. But when Esther rejects a forceful suitor in favor of a lover from the land of fairy, not only the sisters bond, but also their lives will be at risk. So, like I said, haven't really read any fairy books before, but I really enjoy Amal El-Mohtar's writing style, and especially how she writes like a slow burn, pining, sapphic romance. And I really enjoy a novella that doesn't spend a ton of time kind of like explaining the lore of a sci-fi and fantasy universe. I love to be just like thrown straight into it and expected to figure it out on my own. Kind of in the style of a book like This Is How You Lose the Time War. Or another really good sci-fi sapphic book is Upright Woman Wanted, where you don't get a lot of backstory, you're kind of just thrown into it. And I really love that in sci-fi fantasy. This book is only 144 pages. There's not enough space to give you a lot of lore and backstory, which is more my style for something like this. So if you like me, if you loved Amal El-Mohtar's other book, then get ready for this one. But instead of space assassins, you have fairies, which I think could be fun. We will check it out though. So this one is called The River Has Roots, and it is out March 4th. And the cover is really gorgeous. So if you're the kind of person who'll just read a book based on the cover of it, I think this one will probably sell you.
Back to our questions. Yes. All right. So what is the first TV show, movie, anime, whatever it is that you watch in 2025? Or kids cartoon, I guess.
I mean, I don't want to say Gabby's Dollhouse, but no, actually, I do have an answer to this because on New Year's, this may have been way, way before midnight, but both me and Tyler started getting back into 90 Day Fiancé. So we are going to start this year strong. The sleaziest, the better. 90 Day Fiancé Last Resort, where they bring all the couples whose marriages are fading to a fancy resort in the tropics to try and figure out their issues. It doesn't go well. It doesn't go well at all.
Incredible stuff. All right. I'm going to slightly cheat a little bit because I don't watch a ton of TV or films. So I'm going to go with the one that just maybe isn't technically 2025, but it's probably the one that I'm going to see. My dear friend and I watched Kraven the Hunter in a movie theater. We didn't pay for it, thank goodness. When we went to go purchase our tickets, we were surprised that there were other people in the theater. There were 6 of us. 2 of them left halfway through. It was us and the other people. And there's a certain point in the movie where someone says something that all 5 of us dissolved into hysterical laughter of how bad it was, to the point where we were exchanging looks with stranger and being like, can you believe this? Like, what? It was the worst thing I've ever seen. It was a great experience. 5 stars.
So just to set the tone for the year, the first movie that I watched was one that I just cried my head off for the whole morning. And that is an anime called Giovanni's Island. It's an older movie. It is based on sort of post-war Japan when Japan has lost the war and their island, Shikota, has been occupied by Russian soldiers. And so they basically kick everybody out and they kind of like, you lose everything basically to these people. And so we focus on the 2 kids who are living on the island and how the kids themselves, like they go to school and then they have to go to like a different classroom. They have to like all like join together because like they need to leave the other classroom for the Russian kids. And then, like you sort of get the 2 groups kind of eventually kind of like getting to know one another, while the adults is having all these other things that are going on that they may or may not be as aware of. So sort of that friendship that happens there. It's just, it was like a good way to start the year because heavy stuff, cry your head off. Yeah, so that's what I watched that morning. All right, so let's go to our 4th book.
Okay, so by the time this episode gets recorded and released, this book will actually be released, so you don't have to wait for this one at all. My next one is called Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. So back in like the fall, kind of actually towards the end of spooky season, I got this insatiable itch to read a bunch of horror, But because it happened like end of October, early to mid-November, once all of my creepy and spooky holds were in from the library, it was December at that point, and I wanted cozy Christmas books instead. But this year, for this upcoming spooky season in 2025, I'm going to try to make more of an effort to read more horror, read more of that like really, really creepy stuff. Also, side note, last fall I watched The Exorcist for the first time and it changed me. So I think that's kind of where this is coming from, but I'm hoping to delve into some more horror this year. And this is a book that we've been waiting for a hot minute. Its publication date was originally in 2024 and it kept getting pushed back. But like I said earlier, this one is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. And it came out on January 14th. So as of today, it is out and ready for you to check out. So I'll give you a bit of a backstory. This is a historical horror fantasy in the 1970s with witches, who we all know I love. So the description is they call them wayward girls, loose girls, girls who grew up too fast. And they're sent to the Wellwood home in St. Augustine, Florida. Terrifying. I don't like Florida. Where unwed mothers are hidden by their families to have their babies in secret, give them up for adoption, and most important of all, forget any of it ever happened. So there's Fern, who's 15 years old. She's obviously pregnant, as the other girls are in this home, and she's terrified and she's alone. There's also Rose, who's a hippie who insists that she's going to find a way to keep her baby and escape to a commune. There's also Zinnia, a budding musician who's convinced she's going to go home and marry her baby's father. And then there's Holly, who's barely 14, who's mute and pregnant by who knows who. Everything the girls eat in this home, every moment of their waking day, and everything they're allowed to talk about is strictly controlled by adults who claim that they know what's best for them. Then Fern meets a librarian who gives her an occult book about witchcraft, and power is then in the hands of the girls for the first time in their lives. But power can destroy just as easily as it creates, and it's never given freely. There's always a price to be paid, and it's usually paid in blood. So I do have some concerns about this one, especially about a male author writing about unwed teenage pregnancies and kind of the systemic oppression of women. But the reviews so far say that Grady Hendrix handles the topic with kind of surprising and genuine allyship. I have a friend who just read the book. She kind of read it in the 24 hours that it's been released, and she said it was really, really excellently done. So despite the fact that like you may have some qualms about a man choosing to write about these kinds of like definitely very like feminine topics, definitely a topic that's about the female experience, reviews so far are saying that he handles it really, really well. And I feel like this is an especially timely read in the aftermath of Roe versus Wade being overturned in the US, in this political climate we're in now, where women's bodily autonomy kind of is always hanging in the balance, and decisions for their rights lie with wealthy male politicians rather than with the people whose bodies are directly being affected. So I think this book is kind of especially relevant in this current time period that we're at now. And it has witches, who I always will read more books about witches. So if you like historical political fiction, if you're into body horror, or if you're into witchcraft, then you can look forward no longer to Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, because it was out on January 14th.
Let's go back to Corrine. What is your fourth book, Corrine?
My fourth book, I don't know why, but this is the year of me giving cozy fantasy a chance. This book, I think I was mostly attracted to the cover of it, and I'm sure the content will be fine. But the cover, actually, you take it off of the book, like the dust cover, and it like folds into a little origami like object, which I thought is a very cute marketing technique. This has been described as Studio Ghibli meets Aaron Morgenstern meets Before the Coffee Gets Cold. So like 2 out of 3 of those I'm okay with. It's also been kind of the Delagrate Dream Store. I don't know why I keep going back to a genre that I don't particularly love, but here I am again. So this is a book about a young lady, Hannah, who inherits her father's pawn shop in Tokyo. But it's not just a pawn shop of regular pawning things. You're pawning off, I believe it's like your life choices. No, you sell your regrets. don't know what currency you're getting back. Like, as an economy, it seems shaped. And I would love to see what their rental agreement is like. Anyways, pawn shop of bad decisions. And so she's inheriting this pawn shop. And so she goes in on her very first day and finds the pawn shop ransacked. All of the things have been stolen and her dad is missing. Zounds. So she needs to go track him down. But as she does, a mysterious, and I'm going to assume handsome stranger? No, charming stranger. Charming stranger. Yeah. Not too handsome, like infuriatingly handsome, but like regular handsome. Stranger walks in and instead of like wanting to sell something, he wants to help her. And so they embark on a mystical journey to find her father and like the lost stuff, I assume, and get back the stolen choices. But she has a mystery or a secret or whatever that threatens to overset the whole apple cart, like you do. Like you do. Again, it looks great. Great cover. I don't know why I keep going back to this genre because there's something about it that I don't care for. But again, it's got a great cover. I think that's what it is. I like the font. And apparently I'm willing to read stupid telepathic horny sloths for the cover. So this is where I'm at. This is The Water Moon by Samantha Sotto Yambao. I'm really excited about it. Like, I'm willing to give it a shot. Maybe I just haven't found the cozy fantasy that speaks to me. And this is going to be the one. Although I don't really like pawn shops. They have like a weird vibe for me. Thrift store is okay. Pawn shops, weird vibe. Weird. There's just something very different about it. And I don't know why. So, and like, wait, if it's a pawn shop, does that mean that her father takes the regrets and kind of gives them money in the expectation that they're going to come back, pay it back, and buy their regrets? Like, why would they buy their regrets back? I would love to offload my regrets. Like, why not? Why pawn them?
Why would anyone buy them?
Again, the economics of this are puzzling. Because like I would assume like in the way of this, like if you're selling off your regrets, then some like creepy being is like using to like feed off of them or like spin them into like evil magics.
That's the Virginia book. That's not your book.
No, sorry. Right? Like who wants this? Unless it's like a public service. But again, then it's a pawn shop. So the expectation is that at some point you buy them back. But why am I selling my regrets in the first place? Like I would donate my regrets. Like I don't need to be paid for them. If you want to take them off my hands, that's fine. If you want to regret like cutting my bangs at 3:00 in the morning, like you can have that. I don't need that. I don't need to hold on to that at all. I don't need any recompense for it. It's fine. I give that freely. So yeah, I'm very interested about the economics of this. So yeah, it's an economic book. Anyways, Water Moon. We'll see. I'm going to throw it back at Sadie. I hope yours makes more economic sound sense.
I'm going to say yes. Yes, for sure. So this is actually one that I really like the cover of as well because the colors are just really, really cool. So this is the Amalfi Curse by Sarah Penner. Sarah Penner is known for The Lost Apothecary and the London Seance Society, both of which I've read, both of which I've enjoyed. So this one I'm looking forward to. Her books always kind of have a hint of magic in them, a hint of, well, not really a hint, but like the looking back into history, multiple storylines, like the parallel storylines, one modern, one not. So I'm sure that this will kind of be similar. Powerful Witchcraft, a hunt for sunken treasure, forbidden love on the high seas. I know, it's a swashbuckling tale, maybe. So it follows Haven Ambrose, who is a trailblazing nautical archaeologist, which is quite a career. And I'm not sure if that is an economically sound career or not. I really don't know. She's come to the sun-soaked village of Positano to investigate the mysterious shipwrecks along the Amalfi coast. But Haven is hoping to find more than old artifacts. She is secretly on a quest to locate a trove of priceless gemstones. Upon Haven's arrival, strange maelstorms and misfortunes start plaguing the town. Is it just nature, or is something more sinister going on? So as Haven searches for her father's sunken treasure, she begins to unearth a centuries-old tale of ancient sorcery, and one woman's quest to save her lover and her village by using the legendary art of Strigaria. I'm going to say Strigaria, a magical ability to harness the ocean. So this is kind of set up, I feel like, to check off a lot of the boxes of my favorite genres, the historical, the mystery, the fantasy, probably a little bit of romance. It sounds like the author, as I said, I've really enjoyed Sarah Penner's work in the past. So I'm excited to kind of see if this one holds up. And just that cover, the colors, there's something about those colors that just trying to draw you in. This is another one that I kind of discovered yesterday. It hasn't been on my radar for too long, but I'm excited to get into this one and see kind of what happens with Haven, which is it's quite a name, Haven Ambrose. I feel like I'm hoping, I think, what was it, The Treasure Hunter's Guide to something that I read last year by Tom Ryan. I think I'm hoping for this one to be maybe a better version of that. I feel really bad saying that because I've enjoyed Tom Ryan's work in the past, but that one just did not do it. So I'm hoping that this one maybe kind of feeds that sunken treasure hunting kind of part of me. So that is The Amalfi Curse by Sarah Penner. All right, Virginia, what is your next book?
All right, so really, it kind of goes with the movie that I watched earlier. And when I was doing my list, I was like, I could easily do like 5 Japanese books in translation because there's so many coming out, including, I know I'm not going to mention all of them, but including, I do have to say, Vanishing World by Sayaka Murata. I mean, like, just, that one, but I can fit those other ones in at some point during this podcast. But I am going to go with the title of the whole episode, which is most anticipated. I mean, more like longest anticipated, because I found out this book like quite early on last year, and I have been like looking forward to reading it. So I thought that kind of maybe make more sense. So this is coming out in March 19. It's called Wildcat Dome by Yuko Tsushima, translated by Lisa Hofmann-Kuroda from Japanese. And a little bit about the author. You may be familiar with this author from her other works, Territory of Light, Child of Fortune, Woman Running in the Mountain. They're all kind of like classics, like sort of essentials, Japanese post-war author. And she tackles a lot about sort of societal expectations of women, especially for her, having been a single mother, having gone through a divorce, having gone through a death of a child. She talks a lot about in her books, like that motherhood and single motherhood especially, and kind of what people expect women to get out of a marriage. And as she said in one of her interviews, she was like, a divorced mother usually like they chooses to be a good mother, not only just to gain that social recognition, but also to be appreciated by her own children for not having abandoned them. And she find that, she said, like, you know, the children is a heavy burden for divorced women. And I think that theme is really explored in Territory Light. When I read it, I don't think there's ever a book that I have been so concerned about the well-being of a child than that book. And also the mother herself, trying to sort of build a life in Tokyo. Tsushima, you may also know because she is the daughter of novelist Osamu Dazai, whom we have already talked about a few times on the show, who committed double suicide when she was 1 year old. And as she said, like, yeah, I read his work, but like I can't separate myself. So don't ask me about like what I think about his books, because of course, like this event really influenced her life. And having read her book before, I'm fully prepared that this one is going to really just like take over everything in my life, because that's the kind of writing that she does. This story is set in post-war Japan, and it specifically deals with all of the many, many children that have been abandoned. They were fathered by American soldiers, and after the war, of course, they all went back to the States, and a lot of mothers are not able to take care of the kids, not able to afford to take care of the kids, and so they have to give the kids up to orphanages or for adoption. And so Tsushima looks at sort of what life is like for these kids, and like as they grow up, the discrimination, the racism, the bullying that they face because they are biracial. And so when Japan was defeated, a lot of people project a lot of their own feelings to these kids, their shame, the anger, the hopelessness that they felt, and they take it out on them. And so these kids have a very, very hard life growing up. A lot of them, even though they have been adopted by families, some of them, abroad, living abroad in the States, in Europe, because it's not as safe for them in Japan, that discrimination stays with them for the rest of their life. So in this book, we follow a particular orphanage and the kids that live there and the three women who take care of them. And 50 somewhat years later, now they're older adults, there's something that still binds them together that haunted them is this one trauma that they have witnessed when they were a child. And because of the way the society is, it was something that they never got a chance to talk about and to process. The adults also, because they want to protect the kids or they don't want the kids to know, also keep very hush-hush about everything. So at some point, it is too late for them to actually go back and figure out what actually happened. And so it doesn't matter where they are, doesn't matter how many years have passed, they're still trying to figure out what actually happened, what did we see. And so it really explored the way our memory work, how we construct what we think happened based on facts, but also based on sort of like a lot of other things that came to us. And so for these kids, it's very, very hard for them to sort of figure out what happened. And it's something that just keep coming back. And every time they see each other, every time they see a particular location or a particular object, they will think of that incident. I find the way the writing really works for this because all the voices sort of blend into one another and the past kind of flows into the present, and it doesn't really have there's no clear transitions, there's no clear warning. So sometimes you'll be reading and you'll be like, okay, so now we're in the present, or now we're going back to the past, now we're talking from this person, now we're coming with that person. And I think it's really appropriate for a story that really tackles all of the way, like everything is very blurry, everything is very like messy, and it really reflects like how all the characters feel about sort of their lives. You also get a lot of like not just inner monologues, but also characters directly kind of having conversations with their friends that are elsewhere. They're not there, but they're kind of directly addressing them, and they were like, oh, like, I wonder what you're doing. Are you doing this now? Or like, oh, do you remember when we do this? And so it's like that's kind of conversations that they have in their head, and it's because they have never got a chance to talk about things. So a lot of things happened inside them, and I think there's a lot of internal kind of dialogue happening, and it's something that, as a society, they were never able to really voice that concerns. They were always kind of like avoiding talking about what actually happened. And so all of that kind of comes and is sort of, the symbolized with all the way the story is being told. So I really enjoyed how the book was told. I know reading some of the reviews, I think some readers find that kind of awkward. Maybe it's just a little harder to kind of piece together, but I think it really reflects how the experiences for all these kids. So I think if you prepare for like a more emotional kind of read and with a bit of like sort of that, because you never quite sure, just like the characters, as a reader, you're also trying to figure out like what actually happened. And it's never quite clear. You get all the glimpses of it from all the different people, the kids, the adults, and everybody around, but like you're never quite sure what happened. I'm like almost at the end, so we'll see, give they actually reveal what actually happens. But I don't really think if that's like kind of the point of it, is sort of that experience of it. So anyway, so that is The Wildcat Dome by Yuko Tsushima, and it is translated by Lisa Hofmann-Kuroda. All right. So we have one more book to go, a couple more questions for everybody here. Because eventually we love some of us love the inside, love our homes, love to stay at home forever if we can. But at some point we do have to go outside. So what is the first outside place that you went to in 2025? Hopefully it's not the Port Moody Public Library, but it could be.
Gosh, I think I mostly slept through all of January 1st because we had a big event at the library and I was bagged afterwards. I was so tired that I think I actually did spend all of January 1st at home. I don't think I went anywhere. So the first place that I went in 2025 was to work on January 2nd. That's so glum, Virginia. That's so glum. I wish it was something else, but I didn't leave the house.
Which is a good thing. You didn't have to leave the house. That's not a bad thing.
I mean, you could have asked where I would have liked to go.
Okay. Well, rewind.
Rewind. Or where I'm going to go in 2025? Or like,
Sure.
where I want to go? Because going to work is just like a little glum.
Doesn't have to be on that first day, I guess. I don't know.
What's your question?
I don't know. I mean, like, I'm
What's the
trying to figure out, like,
Virginia?
how can we make it a little less glum?
Well, maybe Sadie has a better answer.
Okay, well, there you
like,
go.
Did
Yeah.
you go somewhere nice?
We'll just live vicariously through Sadie. Sadie.
I went to Granville Island and walked down a gigantic empty water slide with my child. That is like one of the funnest things that she enjoys doing. I don't know if anyone has been to the water park at Granville Island. They have like a little splash park, and then they have a big water slide that is on during the summer. And apparently during the not summer, it is quite common for children to just run up and down this gigantic water slide. And so she just like, you go to the top, she slides down the first part, and then she just like walks and runs down the rest of it. So that is what I did on January 1st. Yeah, which it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed taking her to Granville Island. It's a bit different from our usual every day kind of going to the park by our house. Tyler took her out in the morning to meet up with a couple friends. And so I took her out in the afternoon and we kind of did that. Yeah. So then that's where I went. On the next day, I just came to work. So samesies. As my daughter would say, same. Yeah. What about you, Virginia?
Pretty sure it's a coffee shop. Pretty sure. You know, New Year's, go to get a good cup of coffee. I'm pretty sure that's what I did. Didn't do much else. I was going to stay home, but yes, probably went out to get a coffee. So not as exciting than running up a slide. Oh, Corinne, while you were sleeping, did you dream about going to some places?
Oh, I don't think I remember. I don't usually remember my dreams unless they're very upsetting.
You're so tired.
It was very funny. Like I woke up, I saw my roommates had a cup of tea and they're like, "Oh, what are you going to do today?" And I just looked at them and I think I immediately fell asleep mid-conversation. They're like, "Oh, okay." I would like wake up periodically, go and eat something and then go right back to sleep. It was great. It was so great. I was so warm and toasty with my little heated mattress, like a perfect little lasagna.
See, still a good way to spend. Going inside is great. All right, Miss Corinne, your last book. What is the last book you're looking forward to reading?
Well, Virginia. My last book, my number one book, has a BTS connection because of course it does. It's got to start. I will say the one thing I am looking forward to in 2025 that was just announced is that J-Hope is going on tour. So apparently I'm going to San Francisco. Very excited about that. But yes, it is a BTS connection because this is the newest book after quite a long time. I can't remember when Almond was published, but it's been quite a long time. And so it is their follow-up to that kind of bestseller by Won-pyung Sohn. And it is their newest book, Counterattacks at 30. Again, great cover. It's kind of the outline of an office worker, but instead of a tie, they've got an egg. Yep. So again, boy, this has been described as The Devil Wears Prada meets The Office, which is maybe not two things that are immediately appealing to me. I have never seen The Devil Wears Prada. I assume it's a movie. So this is going to be, I think, another kind of social commentary, but funnier and slyer, which I think should be fun. It's about Jie, who works for the Academy, according to my notes, or Akaden. I need to get better writing. But anyways, so she works in kind of like an office. She deals with bureaucracy. She deals with like the regular office things, boring meetings that could have been an email, emails that could have been a meeting. She is the kind of master of the side eye you have with your coworkers when your boss says something egregiously nonsensical. And so she is content to kind of live her regular office life until there is a new intern. And this new intern kind of shakes things up a little bit. They and their tiny little group of office mates start doing minor revenges against their workplace that can involve small graffitis or throwing eggs or just little bits of chaos that make them happy, and they fight against the man. It has been described as a pacifist V for Vendetta, which I love that description. And it is about like the beauty of friendship and unity against adversity. So I'm really excited for this. I really loved Almond. It's one of my favorite books. I think this is going to be really kind of interesting in that we're all stuck in this capitalist grind, but there's little beautiful parts that we can kind of fight against it and take for ourselves. And I think that's kind of what this book is going to be. I can't wait. Interesting about the egg, because I feel like an egg throwing is not a minor revenge. That's a pretty big revenge. Like if someone threw an egg at me, I would be genuinely very upset. And that's mostly because I hate eggs in all forms. But this is coming out March. And it is. Yeah, do not adjust your podcasting. I just don't remember what day it is. And I thought I was being really sly about it. Mumble, I can get away with this, right? I did not. It's coming out in March. It is translated by Sean Lin Halbert. And that is my number one pick. Again, I'm putting a number to it. And since Virginia already cheated by mentioning another book, I'm going to mention my number 6 pick, which is Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green, because I love medical stuff and John Green's nonfiction is great. So there. All right, Sadie, what's up? What's your number one pick that I'm enforcing a number upon you?
Okay, so I have not put numbers on any of the other ones, but I will probably say that this is my number one pick. This is my second series that I'm going to talk about. This is one that I've been waiting for a while. Again, I think the last one came out in 2022. Maybe, I think so. I talked about the first book on this podcast back in 2020. I think, or 2021. I think it was on one of my most anticipated lists. And then I re-talked about the book after I read it because I absolutely loved it so much. I love this series. I think this is kind of the only stuff that this author has done. I'm not sure. I'd have to check that. But anyways, this is the newest book in the Legendborn cycle. This is Oathbound by Tracy Deonn. So this tells the story of Bree Matthews. In our first book, Legendborn, we meet Bree. She is 16 years old and her mother has just passed away in a car accident. And she has decided that she's going to go to a kind of like high school, college prep program at UNC Chapel Hill. And her best friend arrive there together. And the first night that she is there, a flying demon attacks the party that she is at and starts feeding on human energies, as happens normally in most college experiences. Got to get the legit college experience. Through this, she learns about a secret society called Legendborn, who is tasked not only with kind of hunting these creatures down, but they are also the reincarnated spirits, I'm not sure if that's the right word, of the Knights of the Round Table. So throughout history, ever since the Knights of the Round Table themselves were no longer here, their spirits passed along to generations going down the line. And so each one is tasked, each new generation is tasked with kind of embodying that spirit and preparing for the final battle when these demons finally break through and humanity has to fight for its existence against them. And that is what Legendborn is there to stop. So Bree is sort of brought into this organization through Nick, who is kind of a self-exiled member of Legendborn. As the first book goes on, you learn that that's not quite exactly right. And his destiny is intertwined with the society a lot more than he would like and a lot more than he tells Bree. And Bree's destiny is intertwined with the society a lot more than anyone ever imagines it would be. There are a lot of very rich, very white people in this society who are rather unhappy when Bree's destiny is revealed. And this is now the third book, Oathbound. And so it kind of picks up the story where the second one, Bloodmarked, left off. And Bree is now alone. She has exiled herself from the Legendborn Order in order to, she hopes, keep herself safe and keep those that she loves safe. She's also cut her ancestral connection to the spirit that she was kind of tied to and the spirit that she was embodying in Legendborn. But she's going to have to realize that the choice that she made and the decision and the deal that she kind of brokered in order to save her friends at the end of the last challenge, that it kind of comes with quite a terrible price. And so she's going to have to figure out how that guides her life, how she can escape from that if she wants to, if she is even able to, and how she can kind of find her way back to her friends and back to the society if that is what she chooses to do. There's more kind of wars. The other scions of the Round Table are now tasked with fighting against all of these demons who are coming through from this other world, and they're trying to figure out exactly what to do with without having a leader anymore. Many things happened, and they no longer have a leader, and so it's kind of picking up that story right from there. I don't know if I'd call it dark academia. It definitely takes place in a school setting. It's kind of adjacent to that, but it also kind of has that, obviously, the retelling, the taking a classic story and kind of flipping it on its head a little bit. Yeah, and Bree is quite a, I don't want to say relatable, but kind of a strong, sympathetic character that you really, really want to connect with. You really, really want to follow her story. You really want to see her succeed. And so I've always really liked reading about her story and kind of seeing where she's going to go. So I'm really excited about this next one coming out. This one comes, I believe, also in this one is March 4th, 2025. Sorry, Green. And that is Oathbound by Tracy Deonn. All right, Virginia, number one pick. What do we got?
No, absolutely not number one pick. No, not doing this. But even if you have never seen Indiana Jones, I feel like you would know the iconic scene where there's this colossal boulder that is rolling down and chasing after Harrison Ford. What if, instead of a giant rock, we have a really, really big ball that is matte black in color, that no light reflects from it, and it just sort of absorbs everything. And this black ball, unlike the giant boulder that makes a lot of noise, there's just no sound as it moves. What if instead of this like really, really fast moving thing that is chasing you and going to flatten you into a pancake, what if this ball moves more at a walking speed that you could kind of fairly easy outrun if you are willing to run? What if this ball is still relentless, that it could sense where a human is and that will pursue you at its own speed to the end of the world? And what if you think, well, I can probably hide from it, but what if you notice that this black ball can actually move through walls? And that no bullets, no anything could stop it, and that if it touches you, you will get sucked right in. And what if this relentless black giant ball starts to multiply? 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, and they are all coming after you. That is the premise of The Black Orb by Ewhan Kim, translated also by Sean Lin Halbert, like Korean's book. And I believe when I was reading about it, I believe the Korean name might mean more to Orb of Despair, which I like a lot more than just The Black Orb. But anyway, so this is a story that is set in downtown Seoul, where one evening our main character Jeong-soo was just like taking a smoke break, and he saw something really, really black coming from the alley. I thought it was just like this big giant shadow, but it turns out to be this big giant black orb. And then when his neighbor went to try to like confront it, it just sucks the neighbor right inside. And so as the boar slowly turns his attention to him, he starts running and realizes that he doesn't have to run super fast to outrun this thing. He ran away and he managed to escape. And then he started thinking, well, maybe I just imagined this whole thing. This like can't be what happened. I must have just hallucinated all of it. But as he starts seeing more and more news reports that there is this monster that is terrorizing Seoul, people start to panic, including our main character, who is trying to get to his parents' house, thinking that maybe it is just in the city. If I can get out of the city, then I'll be fine. Just like everybody else was thinking. So quickly descends into chaos, mass panic everywhere. And our main character got to the house. They were supposed to be there. His parents were supposed to wait for him, but they weren't there. So he's trying to like find out where his parents are. A story, of course, that talks about that orb of despair that is following all of us, the anxiety, the fear that we have in this day and age because of all the things that happen, and how fragile our civilization is, or what we call civilization, how easily it is that everything just turn into chaos because of people, misinformation, because of paranoia, because of all the stuff that we are very familiar with in the news. As one of the, I don't have the name of the person, I didn't write it down, but he called this a thriller at walking speed, which I really, really love. So I cannot wait for this novel to come out in February. It is the 12th novel by the author, but it's the first one that gets translated into English. So hopefully there will be more from this particular author. So if you're looking to reading some sort of like, I guess, a little bit of dystopian, probably, in your new year, you can check out The Black Orb by Ewhan Kim, translated by Sean Lin Halbert.
Okay, last book. This last one I have is the one that's going to be least surprising to all of you guys. This is one of my favorite new authors that I discovered in 2024. Her book's Interesting Facts About Space was one of my best books of 2024. And although it wasn't published last year, her debut novel, Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead, was also one of the best books that I read last year. So this author is Emily Austin, and her new upcoming book is called We Could Be Rats. So this is one I'm super excited about. It's from Ottawa-based author Emily Austin. If you're looking forward to reading more CanCon, this is a great one you can look forward to. And this book comes out later this month on January 28th. So it's described as a moving story about two very different sisters and a love letter to childhood, growing up, and the power of imagination. And I always love a good kind of complex sister narrative. Obviously, my best book of last year was Private Rights. I love King Lear. I love anything with kind of complicated sister relationships. So this one is very much up my alley. So one of the sisters is Sigrid, and she hates working at the Dollar Pal. But having always resisted the idea of growing up into the trappings of adulthood, she did not graduate high school. She prefers to roam the streets of her small town with her best friend Greta, the only person in the world who ever understood her. Her older sister, Margit, not Margaret, Margit, is baffled and frustrated by Sigrid's inability to conform to the expectations of polite society. But Sigrid's detachment veils a deeper turmoil and sensitivity. She's haunted by the pains of her past, from pretending her parents were swamp monsters when they shook the floorboards with their violent arguments, to grappling with losing Greta's friendship to the opioid epidemic ravaging their town. As Margit sets out to understand Sigrid and the secret she has hidden, both sisters, on their own time and in their own ways, discover that reigniting their shared childhood imagination is the only way forward. So what unfolds from this is an unforgettable story of two sisters finding their way back to each other and a celebration of that transcendent and unshakable bond. So, like I said before, as we're all aware, I love books about depressed lesbians, about complex sister relationships. That's kind of like if I had to describe my reading taste in two phrases, those would be it. So I'm really, really looking forward to reading this one. Everything I've read by Emily Austin so far, her two other novels and her poetry collection, I've really, really enjoyed her writing style. I think she captures the millennial lesbian, millennial sapphic experience really well. I think her writing is extremely relatable. And I think something she really excels at is writing kind of the the mental illness spiral that her characters go through without it becoming just depressing. Like sometimes I don't enjoy reading things where nothing good happens, where everything is just more and more upsetting, more and more depressing. I like there to be a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, a little bit of humor peppered in there. And I think that's something that Emily Austen really excels at, is making these kind of more upsetting experiences just like deeply funny in their own kind of weird and quirky ways. So I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how she tackles this kind of complex sister relationship, in addition to like mental illnesses that the characters are dealing with. I was able to get an advanced reader copy of this book. I haven't read it yet, but my partner did. And I do have a content warning that there are discussions of suicide in this book. So just keeping that in mind if you do end up checking this book out. But yeah, I think Emily Austen is a really excellent writer with capturing these kinds of more complex and difficult experiences in a way that is authentic and relatable, but also maintaining a sense of humor to it. As we can expect from her, she does it with grace, she does it with authenticity, and also will undoubtedly make me laugh throughout the whole book. So this one is We Could Be Rats by Emily Austen, out January 28th.
All right. So those are our books that we are looking forward to reading in the next few months. So my last question for everybody, since this is a podcast, I don't know if this makes sense, but what is the first podcast episode that you listen to? And I know it's okay if it's not Keep It Fictional because we didn't have any that came out. So some other podcasts.
This is so easy. It is the re-release episode of How Did This Get Made's discussion of the seminal Nicolas Cage classic Con Air, in which one of the hosts, Jason Mantzoukas, vehemently defends that this is an awesome movie, an opinion which I share, which the rest of the audience tries to convince him that no, it's a terrible movie and Nicolas Cage's accent and wig is horrible. However, they're all incorrect. It's a great film.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Wait, which is the song? No, is that the Aerosmith? No, that's not the Aerosmith. That's Armageddon. Trisha Yearwood?
I think it's Leanne Rimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Again, talking about iconic scenes, honestly. His hair wouldn't be the same without his hair. I'm pretty sure mine is the hockey podcast, 32 Thoughts, because obviously it's going to be a hockey podcast. So yeah, like that's something that because it's hard to find things that both my husband and I enjoy. And I think in terms of in the car, if we're listening to something, that is probably one of the very few things that we would be able to listen together. So yeah.
I have no answer. I have not listened to any podcast in 2025. I've been audiobooking when I've been in the car. So that is what I've been listening to. No podcasts yet.
And what is the audiobook?
So I just finished one that I will be talking about in a couple of weeks called The Monsters We Defy. And then I just started another one that I'm going to be talking about in a couple of weeks called The King of Infinite Space. I won't say too much because I will talk more about them.
Look at you planning ahead.
It's Sadie. Sadie always plan ahead. How's the Sunday reading going, Miss Corrine?
Oops.
I mean, you don't have to have an actual book read until next week. So you're still ahead of schedule because you don't have to start it until Sunday.
Yeah, I've got time. I'll be fine. We're only one weekend in, if I remember correctly.
Well, that's what Sadie was saying. You still have 50 somewhat weeks to start this habit.
Yes, my new Sunday habit. And next week's theme is
revisiting, I think, a book that you like, just like Emma said. So yeah. And Emma's also already ahead. So they're already finished. So and I'm pretty sure Sadie also read your book already, right?
I found it. I had to dig through my storage closet, but I found it.
So a little preview for our audience for the next few upcoming episodes. So thank you, book friends, for sharing your most anticipated reads. At some point, I guess we may or may not report back on all of them to tell you about what the sloth actually does, the economics of Water Moon, how does the pawn shop work, And then whether those sequels are good. They live up to, that's the phrase. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Live up to Sadie's expectations are just as good as the other ones. So, all right. Well, we'll report back. And in the meantime, happy reading. See you next week.
Thank you for listening. If you like our show, please tell a fellow book lover about it. You can find a list of all the books we discussed in our show notes. Join us next week for another fun book chat. Until then, keep it fictional.